Muy buenas tardes. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos a la inauguración de este noveno Congreso Internacional de Enseñanza Bilingüe en Centros Educativos. Tengo que decirles, en primer lugar, que hay un error en el cartel. No soy Jorge Pérez Serrano, soy Juan Ramón Velasco, soy vicerrector de Innovación Docente y Transformación Digital de la Universidad y sustituyo a Jorge, que se nos ha puesto enfermo, se nos puso enfermo anoche y me llamó para ver si yo podía venir y, por supuesto, estoy encantado de estar aquí con ustedes. Me acompañan en la mesa, a mi derecha, doña Ana Guarinos, la alcaldesa de Guadalajara. A mi izquierda, don Justin Thomas, representante de la Embajada de Estados Unidos de América. Y en el extremo de la mesa, don Xavier Gisbert, que seguro que es al que conocen de todos los que estamos aquí con más facilidad, como presidente de la Asociación de Enseñanza Bilingüe. Para mí, como decía, es un placer participar en esta sesión porque, como vicerrector de Innovación Docente, precisamente soy el responsable dentro de nuestra universidad de todos los cambios que tenemos que ir haciendo en la enseñanza, y creo que uno de los mayores cambios que se produce dentro de las enseñanzas primaria y secundaria, precisamente en los últimos años, es esa potenciación de la enseñanza de los idiomas para que nuestros chicos, nuestras chicas, sean capaces de enfrentarse a un mundo que es absolutamente global. Además, y me agrada en particular estar siempre en los congresos, porque soy un convencido de la cultura de los congresos, frente a los que defienden que pues a la hora de publicar, por ejemplo, o de difundir los resultados de la investigación, las revistas es lo más relevante. Yo creo que la relación personal que se alcanza en un congreso no se alcanza jamás a través de las revistas. Y la posibilidad de emprender nuevos proyectos a partir de ese contacto personal que pueden tener aquí, desde luego va a ser importante. Voy a contarles un poco, para que vean la importancia que a lo largo de la historia han tenido las lenguas dentro de nuestra universidad, de la Universidad de Alcalá. Les voy a contar un poquito de la historia de la universidad. Voy a ser muy breve, ¿vale? No va a ser una cosa demasiado profunda. Pero las lenguas es algo realmente relevante dentro de los inicios de la Universidad de Alcalá. La Universidad de Alcalá se funda en 1499 y una de las misiones fundamentales, uno de los proyectos fundamentales del fundador, del cardenal Cisneros, es el desarrollo de lo que se conoce como la Biblia políglota complutense. No sé si han tenido ocasión de ver unas páginas de la Biblia políglota, pero son 6 tomos. El primero de ellos es el más espectacular, es el que tiene los 5 primeros libros de la Biblia. Y se hablaba en hebreo, hasta el punto de que en el examen, es famosa la historia, ¿no?, de que en los exámenes de las tesis doctorales se hacían un montón de preguntas. Cada profesor que había tenido el candidato a doctor hacía una pregunta al candidato y la hacía en una de esas 3 lenguas, y el candidato tenía que responder en esa lengua. O sea que necesitabas tener un dominio considerable de la lengua franca y de otras 2, que, por cierto, es una de las propuestas de la Unión Europea, ¿no?, esto de que cada uno conozca su lengua y otras 2 lenguas. Bueno, pues el cardenal Cisneros ya fue bastante innovador en esto. Lo que pasa es que, bueno, pues luego se nos han ido olvidando, pero ya era innovador. Lenguas un poco raras para nuestro tiempo, pero entonces muy normales. En aquel momento, el cardenal trajo a la universidad a los filólogos más importantes de la época. Trajo, como digo, a Nebrija, que además de hacer la gramática del castellano, que luego sirvió como modelo de gramática para las lenguas de Latinoamérica, pues hizo esa traducción, esa segunda traducción al latín de la Biblia. Demetrio Ducas, que era catedrático de griego y es el responsable de la versión griega de la Biblia. Benito Arias Montano, que era el hebraísta, era el que sabía de lenguas semíticas. Y, bueno, un montón de gente. Pero no se quedó ahí. A lo largo de la historia me gustaría nombrarles una persona de la que no han oído hablar seguro, Se llama Lorenzo Hervás y Panduro. ¿Le conocen? Me extrañaría, claro. Bueno, pues este hombre fue un jesuita que estudió en Alcalá y que luego se dedicó a estudiar las lenguas de todos los indígenas en Latinoamérica y a sistematizarlas. Pero no solamente hizo eso, sino que le gustaba tanto el tema de las lenguas que comenzó a desarrollar el sistema de lengua de signos para el español, para que las personas que no podían oír pudieran hablar convenientemente, ¿no? Yo creo que es algo relevante, es un alumni de la universidad que, desde luego, como digo, es importante. Quiero, ya para ir terminando, agradecer a la Asociación de Educación Bilingüe el haber elegido nuestra universidad para celebrar el Congreso. Creo, como representante de la universidad, que estamos todos enormemente satisfechos porque podamos ser el lugar donde se debata de las cosas que de verdad son importantes, y estamos convencidos de que esto es un tema importante. Y como decía antes, es importante no solamente porque es su trabajo, que claro, cada uno siempre piensa que el trabajo de uno o de una es lo más importante que hay, sino porque va a ayudar a que los chicos y las chicas del futuro, como decía antes, puedan relacionarse en un mundo absolutamente global. Comentaba antes con la alcaldesa que mi hija está trabajando fuera de España, está trabajando en Copenhague. Mi hijo ha estado durante varios años también. Si no hubiera tenido conocimiento de una lengua distinta a la nuestra, pues desde luego no habría podido hacerlo. Y es algo absolutamente fundamental. Ellos se sienten ciudadanos del mundo, no de Guadalajara, lo siento, es lo que hay, no de España, se sienten ciudadanos del mundo y van a ir buscando el trabajo allá donde lo tengan. Por otro lado, creo que el conocimiento de las lenguas es algo que nos une fundamentalmente. El conocer la lengua de los demás, la cultura de los demás, nos hace entender más fácilmente a aquellos que hablan de otra manera y, por lo tanto, nos hace entendernos en lugar de separarnos. Todos aquellos que piensan que las lenguas pueden ser utilizadas contra alguien, yo desde luego creo que no, que deben ser utilizadas a favor de alguien, y que la lengua nos debe unir, y conocer las lenguas de los demás nos deben unir. Creo, desde luego, que ese futuro en el que ojalá lo alcancemos, todo el mundo sea capaz de hablar dos lenguas, además de la suya propia, como digo, estoy convencido de que si llegamos a ese futuro, y espero que así sea, el entendimiento en la sociedad a nivel mundial será muchísimo más sencillo. Así que muchas gracias, y voy a darle ahora la palabra a doña Ana Guaninos, la alcaldesa de la ciudad. Gracias.
Muy buenas tardes. En efecto, yo creo que todos somos ciudadanos del mundo. Nacemos donde nos toca, pero creo que no solemos estar en un sitio de forma permanente mucho tiempo, y más las nuevas generaciones. En un mundo más globalizado y cada día más globalizado, tenemos que ser ciudadanos del mundo. Estimados participantes de este 9º Congreso Internacional de Enseñanza Bilingüe, bienvenidos a la ciudad de Guadalajara. Permítanme que salude previamente a quienes me acompañan en esta mesa, aunque ya lo he hecho antes de llegar aquí. En primer lugar, a quien me ha precedido en el uso de la palabra, Juan Carlos Velasco, que es, le ha tocado sustituir a otro vicerrector, pero bueno, es vicerrector de Innovación y otras muchas cosas de la universidad. Me corresponde también saludar, en este caso, al consejero de Asuntos Educativos de la Embajada de los Estados Unidos, don Justin Thomas, bienvenido a la ciudad de Guadalajara, y, como no, al señor presidente de la Asociación de Enseñanza Bilingüe, Xavier Gisbert, por su liderazgo y difusión de la enseñanza bilingüe en España y en el mundo. He dicho Juan Carlos, Juan Ramón, ahora que estoy en el lapsus. Bienvenidos a todos y gracias por estar hoy aquí para nosotros, para la ciudad de Guadalajara, para este ayuntamiento, y para mí especialmente es todo un honor. Un honor darles la bienvenida, insisto, al 9º Congreso Internacional de Enseñanza Bilingüe, que se va a celebrar en nuestra ciudad a lo largo de este fin de semana, los días 20, 21 y 22. Este evento es una oportunidad única para compartir experiencias, conocimientos e innovaciones en el ámbito de la educación bilingüe, que cada vez tiene más relevancia e impacto en una sociedad, como hemos dicho, globalizada y diversa. La enseñanza bilingüe es una herramienta poderosa para el desarrollo personal, yo más que poderosa diría poderosa y necesaria en este momento, para el desarrollo personal, profesional y social de las personas. A través del aprendizaje de otras lenguas y también de otras culturas, se fomenta el respeto, la tolerancia y la comunicación entre los pueblos. Es verdad que conocer una, dos o varias lenguas no nos tiene que separar, nos tiene que unir y nos tiene que enriquecer, porque nos permite comunicarnos, insisto, en un mundo cada día más globalizado. Además, se potencia también el pensamiento crítico, la creatividad, la adaptabilidad y la competencia digital. Habilidades también imprescindibles para afrontar los nuevos retos del siglo XXI. La transformación digital, junto con el conocimiento de diferentes lenguas, es absolutamente necesaria en el mundo y en la sociedad en la que vivimos. Somos conscientes de que el profesorado es el motor de mejora de esta enseñanza. Y por eso queremos y quiero reconocer su labor y facilitar también su formación continua y su actualización metodológica. Estos congresos son fundamentales para debatir, para compartir, para aprender y, lo decía Juan Ramón, es mejor un congreso que cualquier revista, porque aquí se interactúa y se hace de forma inmediata, directa, mucho más eficaz que cualquier revista. Por eso nos sentimos orgullosos de acoger este congreso, que cuenta con el aval científico y académico de nuestra universidad, la Universidad de Alcalá, porque aunque esto es la provincia de Guadalajara y formemos parte de Castilla-La Mancha, también por una cuestión de eficacia, la Universidad de Alcalá la tenemos a escasos kilómetros. Nosotros históricamente hemos tenido vinculación con la Universidad de Alcalá y no con la Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha. Es una cuestión también de eficacia y de sentido común. No podría ser de otra manera. Y, por supuesto, ha sido posible también gracias a la colaboración con otras instituciones y entidades. Este congreso es un espacio de encuentro, de diálogo, de reflexión, para todos los profesionales de la enseñanza bilingüe que podrán asistir a ponencias, talleres, comunicaciones y debates, todos ellos, lógicamente, de gran calidad e interés. Espero que disfruten de este congreso, estoy segura que lo harán, porque la expectación es máxima y el número de participantes supera los 400, lo que significa que existe un gran interés por el mismo. Espero también que aprovechen al máximo las oportunidades de aprendizaje e intercambio de conocimientos que este congreso ofrece. También les invito a conocer nuestra maravillosa ciudad de Guadalajara, su patrimonio histórico y cultural, que es excepcional, su gastronomía, que también es excepcional, y, por supuesto, lo mejor que tenemos, que son las personas, los guadalajareños. Guadalajara les recibe con los brazos abiertos, encantada, y desde luego les desea una feliz estancia. Muchísimas gracias a todos por su presencia y por su interés en este congreso. Espero que sea todo un éxito y que cumpla y supere las expectativas de todas las personas que participan en el mismo. Muy buenas tardes y muchísimas gracias.
Tiene a continuación la palabra don Justin Thomas, representante de la Embajada de Estados Unidos de América.
Bueno, muchas gracias, vicerrector, alcaldesa, Javier. Es un enorme placer para mí y para mi colega de la Embajada estar aquí presentes en este congreso todo este fin de semana aquí en Guadalajara. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Voy a poner mi parte de bilingüismo en esta conferencia y dar mis palabras en inglés.
No esperaba menos.
Muy bien. My name is Justin Thomas. I'm the Public Diplomacy Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Madrid, in charge of education, and that's what brings me to this conference today. I would like to start out by highlighting something that our Secretary of Education in the United States, it's the equivalent of el Ministro de Educación here in Spain, he says frequently about bilingualism. Miguel Cardona is Secretary of Education. Bilingualism is a superpower el bilingüismo es un superpoder. This is his talking point and the line he uses at every chance he gets speaking with other educators. Secretary Cardona and his department have worked tirelessly to boost multilingual education in the United States, providing funding and support for programs that are proven to work in multilingual education. A recent study from the city of Portland in the state of Oregon shows that students enrolled in a dual language program scored 7 months ahead in reading in grade 5 and 9 months ahead in reading in grade 8. This is astounding given the fact that even before the pandemic, it was a great challenge to have all children across the country reading at grade level. And the U.S. Embassy here in Spain is involved in promoting and facilitating English study in schools. One way we do this is through our program of ETAs under the Fulbright program. Los auxiliares de conversación from Fulbright teach all over Spain, and this year there are 200 Fulbright auxiliares de conversación here in this country, together with several thousand that come from the Ministry of Education's program to Spain from the United States. Our opinion polling that we do at the embassy shows that the Spanish public, and in particular the Spanish youth, are hungry to learn English, enjoy their courses, it inspires them to study, and they have a strong interest in getting to know more from our perspective about the United States, the American culture they hear in music, they see on television, and getting that in the classroom. It makes them excited to go to school and excited to learn. The embassy is extremely proud and thankful also to another group of people, the Spanish profesores visitantes. I'm wondering, I believe there are some, but I'm wondering if there are any former profesores visitantes here in the room. Thank you. And hopefully some future profesores visitantes in the room as well. Let's stay in touch because you are a key part of making our bilingual education successful in the United States. Bilingual teachers are in short supply and high demand in my country. More than 30 states reported critical shortages in English as a second language teachers and world language teachers. So please continue to sign up and come to the United States. We count on your support to make that program successful. We're extremely happy to announce that this year, any participant who's been a profesor visitante in the United States can be considered an official exchange alumni of the United States government, which means that resources are available to you, those of you who raised your hands, to meet with other alumni, explore resources for your classroom, create projects, and receive money to make that happen. So if anyone has more curiosity about that, please come talk to me. In 2024, we will be reaching out to you in new ways, and I'm very happy to announce that. The fact is, if bilingualism is a superpower, those of you here in this room are our superheroes. The decisions made about education today and in the years to come will determine not only whether a child will have the chance to fulfill her dreams, but also whether a country will remain competitive in a rapidly evolving global economy. One of the first instructions we received from our ambassador, Julissa Reynoso, who arrived in Spain in 2022, is that we make all of our programs, whether it's education, climate change, security, we have to make it open to everyone, an opportunity that is available to all and not just with privileged few who have the resources to pursue special programs. It's an honor for us to have Dr. Aida Walke from the United States visiting for this conference. You are a champion in many regards, especially for putting diversity and inclusion at the forefront of bilingual education. Thank you for being here. In fact, earlier this year, Dr. Walke received the English Learner Champion Award from the U.S. Department of Education for her outstanding career. Congratulations, Dr. Walke. For our U.S. Embassy educational programs, inclusion also means supporting bilingual education for all types of students and professions who desire it, including those studying in vocational schools, here in Spain, Centros de Formación Profesional. This is a new area of research that we've we've been inspired to pursue by our ambassador, Julissa Reynoso. And for this, I'm happy to have Shane Lillodahl also here in this plenary session this year and attending this conference. Shane is the director of International Education Center at Orange Coast College in Los Angeles. And he has worked with us before, leading an English language program for Spanish students at Centros de Formación Profesional. He and I will speak on Sunday about community colleges and vocational schools, FEP, here in Spain, and how they can work together. Shane, raise your hand so people know where to find you. There are other resources, of course, that the embassy offers to schools, to teachers, and students that include American English language and culture. We have 3 American spaces in Spain, in Valencia, Barcelona, and Cuenca. And through our website, americanenglish.state.gov. So please seek out these resources, get in touch with the embassy if there's something you're interested in having in your classroom. The United States is a proud believer in bilingual education and the mission that you are all trying to accomplish here today. So to sum up, thank you for inviting me, and more importantly, thank you for your continued work in education. I am where I am who I am because of inspiring teachers, professors, cultural exchange organizations that instilled in me a love for languages and multilingualism. My colleagues and I at the U.S. Embassy in Madrid and the U.S. Consulate in Barcelona share that passion with all of you. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm wishing you many wonderful, meaningful exchanges in person during this conference. Thank you very much.
Tiene la palabra ahora don Xavier Gisbert, presidente de la sección de Enseñanza Bilingüe.
Muchísimas gracias, vicerrector. En primer lugar, decir que es paradójico que en un congreso internacional haya asistentes y ponentes que lleguen antes desde el extranjero que desde España. El problema que todos sabemos es que ayer cayó lo que nadie sabía que podía caer y ha habido una serie de retrasos en los trenes a nivel nacional, y me consta que hay una buena cantidad de compañeros que están todavía no sé en qué pueblo de España esperando que les traiga un tren o coger un taxi. Pero en cualquier caso, gracias a todos por venir. Dear Vice Chancellor of the University of Alcalá, dear Mayoress of Guadalajara, dear Justin, Public Diplomacy Officer of the U.S. Embassy in Madrid, we are here in the opening of the 9th International Conference on Bilingual Education, and I think we all try to be bilingual. In the same way, more than 50% of the world population is. This means that we try to communicate in at least 2 languages, and we must be aware that English and Spanish are the 2 most international spoken languages in the world. So we already have something very important. Mais nous ne devons pas oublier le français. Le français en Espagne est la deuxième langue étrangère la plus demandée par nos élèves. Donc, il faut faire un effort et essayer d'animer le plus grand nombre d'élèves à choisir cette deuxième langue étrangère dans le but de finir les études avec 3 langues étrangères qui va nous permettre à tous d'être des citoyens beaucoup plus internationaux. Bien, este congreso, como los anteriores, lógicamente está abierto a todas las lenguas. Si nos centramos en inglés y español es porque nuestro sistema educativo así lo condiciona y porque tenemos que responder a la demanda. Pero esto no significa que no sean importantes las demás, que son tan importantes como estas 2, ¿no? En cualquier caso, yo doy la bienvenida a representantes, ponentes y asistentes de Japón, Japan, welcome, de Estados Unidos, de México, Portugal, Italia, Brasil y más países. Por lo tanto, thank you very much to all of you for coming to Spain and to Guadalajara to spend the weekend with us. Dicho esto, desde el punto de vista institucional me voy a permitir unos agradecimientos, con permiso del rector. En primer lugar, a los asistentes y a los participantes. Gracias a la Universidad de Alcalá por acoger este congreso, este 9º Congreso Internacional de Enseñanza Bilingüe. gracias a los ponentes, a los asistentes en la mesa, al rector, a la alcaldesa de Guadalajara y al representante de la Embajada de los Estados Unidos, a los directores del Congreso, los directores académicos del Congreso, Jesús García Laborda y Virginia Vinuesa Benítez, a las 19 universidades que participan en este Congreso, con las que mantenemos una excelente relación. Gracias a nuestros amigos del extranjero que vienen también, no ya como ponentes, sino como organización. NABE, National Association for Bilingual Education. Thanks for being here, Judy and Josefina. HESP, Partena Draget, presidenta de HESP. Jay Cleel, Japón, como hemos dicho. CAL, Center for Applied Linguistics. Joel Gómez, gracias por venir. Gracias también a los patrocinadores, sin los cuales sería muy, muy complicado realizar este congreso. Magisterio, GoFluent, EPI, International Educational Partners International, In situ, la Embajada de los Estados Unidos, Santillana, Anaya, British Council, PeopleCert, Cambridge, Académica, y gracias a todos los colaboradores que apoyan este congreso. Y en especial en esta edición quería dar las gracias a las consejerías de educación de Castilla y León, que se han implicado de una manera muy importante en este congreso, a la de Murcia y a la de Madrid. Son 3 comunidades que han enviado a profesores para que asistan y compartan con nosotros sus experiencias y sus conocimientos. Bien, el mérito de este congreso, en principio, parece que puede ser atribuible a la asociación, parece que pueda ser atribuible a la universidad que acoge el Congreso o a los patrocinadores, a las instituciones que apoyan, pero en realidad el gran mérito de este Congreso son los ponentes y los asistentes. Es decir, son todas las personas que dedican un fin de semana de su vida a reunirse, exponer sus experiencias y aprender de los demás. Por lo tanto, muchísimas gracias a todos. Cada año son más los profesionales que participan en estos congresos, cada año nos sumamos más y nosotros, como asociación sin ánimo de lucro, lo único que pretendemos es intentar facilitar el trabajo y defender un modelo de enseñanza en el que creemos y crear este foro de discusión y debate donde todos los años aprendemos cosas. Este año, CIEB 2023, se centra, hemos querido poner el foco en el profesor. Esa figura tan necesaria y tan poco reconocida. Esa figura víctima de un sistema educativo inestable. Esa figura de personas abnegadas, sacrificadas, entregadas, pero insuficientemente agradecidas y respetadas. Somos conscientes del desánimo general que se va extendiendo poco a poco entre este colectivo, del que formamos parte todos, y desde aquí queremos lanzarles un mensaje muy positivo. Queremos decirles que son imprescindibles, que son el motor de la educación y que deben seguir esforzándose día a día en su trabajo. Los alumnos lo agradecerán. Además, no estáis solos, no estamos solos. Cada día somos más, a pesar de los bulos que alimentan algunos medios de comunicación. ¿Hay desánimo? Sí. ¿Hay cansancio? Sí. ¿Las administraciones ayudan? Más bien poco. Pero, a pesar de ello, en los últimos 6 años en España hemos pasado de 1.100.000 alumnos a más de 1.500.000 escolarizados en programas bilingües. Y en esos mismos últimos 6 años hemos pasado de 6.300 centros educativos ofreciendo enseñanza bilingüe a más de 7.300. Con lo cual no debe ir tan mal y no deben huir tantos centros del modelo y del sistema cuando el número tanto de alumnos como de centros no para de crecer. Eso no quiere decir que esté todo bien, hay mucho que hacer, mucho que mejorar, sobre todo la calidad de muchísimos programas. Bien, básicamente ese era el mensaje que queríamos trasladar desde aquí y ahora desde el punto de vista logístico unas pequeñas recomendaciones. La inauguración y las sesiones plenarias van a tener lugar en esta sala, en el salón de actos, y luego los paneles plenarios, los talleres y las comunicaciones van a estar en las aulas que hay en los 2 pasillos a la salida del salón de actos y que están bien indicados. No puedo dejar esta oportunidad sin agradecer el trabajo especial durante todo el año de María José Martínez de Lis, que es la responsable de Relaciones Institucionales de la Asociación y básicamente el alma del Congreso, y a su equipo de colaboradores del Instituto Alonso de Avellaneda de Alcalá, que todos los años, de una manera increíble, nos ayudan, nos apoyan y colaboran con nosotros. Por lo tanto, yo pediría para ese equipo de jóvenes estudiantes de formación profesional del Instituto Alonso de Avellaneda un aplauso. Los organizadores estamos aquí para lo que necesitéis y cualquier cosa, en registro, María José, Virginia, Jesús García Laborda o yo estamos a vuestra disposición. Muchísimas gracias.
Pues para terminar, me sumo desde luego a los agradecimientos a la organización. No es sencillo organizar un evento de estas características, a las instituciones, al Ayuntamiento representado por la alcaldesa y por miembros de la Corporación Municipal, por supuesto a la Embajada de Estados Unidos, a los patrocinadores. Sin patrocinio nada es posible, nunca, y a todos ustedes que desde donde vengan, algunos desde muy lejos, como hemos oído, han tenido, bueno, pues han hecho el esfuerzo de llegar hasta aquí. Muchas gracias por venir y queda inaugurado el Congreso.
La de acá sentada, no se paró.
No, no hace falta, así está.
Ya, Regio, gracias. ¿Lista?
Ok.
Gracias.
¿Cómo? Yo Virginia, sí. Yo Virginia. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Virginia Vinuesa, also Dr. Aida Woki, who's going to be delivering her speech in a minute. To begin with, I was extremely surprised when we could actually get her to come, Aida, to come with us in the afternoon. She's probably one of the busiest persons that I have ever met in my life. And I'm sure it's difficult for her even finding the spot to be able to hear with us. The question is why, but I'm going to be very brief, since you actually asked to be short. Ida Walkie directs the National Research and Development Center for Improving the Education of English Learners. For those people who are not familiar with the American system, those are the guys who are actually taking bilingual education in secondary schools at the West End, where she started one of the agency's signature program, the Quality Teaching of English Learners. QTEL focuses on the development of educator expertise to support elementary and secondary English learners' development of conceptual, analytic, and language practices in disciplinary subject matter areas. That is very much what we call bilingual education in Spain. Since you actually asked me to be very short, I had 2 pages, to be honest, in here to introduce yourself. But I'm going to respect your desire at this time. So I'm going to hand the word over to Dr. Vinuesa.
Okay. Dicen en español que lo breve es y bueno 2 veces buenos, ¿no? Pues yo solamente voy a agradecer a la doctora Walkie que nos haya acompañado hoy y estoy segura que vamos a aprender muchísimo de lo que tiene que contarnos. Así que, doctora Walkie, la palabra es suya.
Muchas gracias. Primero que nada, quiero decir que para mí es tremendamente emocionante el estar acompañándolos a todos ustedes en esta reunión. Hace 20 años hice una plenaria en Vitoria-Gasteiz y pues después de 2 décadas es algo muy lindo regresar a compartir ideas en España. Y quiero decirles que voy a estar aquí durante toda la conferencia porque justamente pienso que el intercambio de ideas debe ser recíproco, sino que entonces miles de gracias. Cuando me hicieron la invitación, pregunté si la ponencia debería ser hecha en español o en inglés y la respuesta fue en inglés. Entonces, mi presentación va en inglés, pero de repente por ahí hacemos un poquito de cambio de códigos en mitad de la presentación. I really think it's a marvelous theme that guides the conference this year, because indeed teachers are pivotal to the success, not just of their students, but to the success of societies as a whole, because that is the role of teachers in the world. And so having them as the center for the focus of these 3 days, I think was a brilliant thing. What I want to discuss and offer ideas about is, indeed, teachers are essential. However, what should drive teachers' actions? So I want to talk about teacher expertise. And expertise is much more than simple knowledge in the head, you know, conceptual understanding, declarative knowledge, where we say what we think we know, but it actually entails, in equal proportions, the ability to enact that knowledge in practice that is contextually situated. Because as we all know, practice that is excellent is not the same from one place to the next. Practice that is accomplished needs to be situated in the specifics. And so in my talk, I want to give you an organizer for the different domains that feed into teacher expertise. And I just want to say that when I'm done, I will send Javier a copy of the presentation so that it is posted and you have access to it. Okay, so don't worry if you don't catch some things you want to know. Plus, you can always stop me and ask me. I'll be delighted to talk about that with you. Well, teacher expertise obviously begins with a vision. And a vision is an idea both of what does great teaching look like, and a vision also of who can my students be. That is essential. Who can my students be at the end of my class? Who can my students be at the end of the semester? who can my students be at the end of the year, and who will they be in society? That conviction, which I call, using a socio-cultural term, is proleptic. Prolepsis means treating students considering the futures we jointly, students and teachers, dream for them. Teachers obviously need to know where they're headed. If we don't know what it is that we want to be able to graduate students with, then learning makes no sense, right? And so teachers need to have that clarity of image, of learning, ideal learning context, but even more importantly, they need to have this future-oriented version of their students. And I wanted to share a wonderful quote that was actually communicated to Bronfenbrenner in the 70s. And it comes from Leontiev, the Russian psychologist of development. And he was comparing what the Soviets at the time understood as development to what the American view was. And what he says is American researchers, is that what you're looking at? Yes. American researchers are constantly seeking to discover how the child came to be what he is. In other words, we measure the past. What have students learned? And he said, instead, in the USSR, we are striving to discover not how the child came to be what he is, but rather how he can become what he is not yet. And I think that is precisely the spirit, because oftentimes we look at students as the half-empty glass, what they don't have. They accomplish this in tests, and they don't have, and they're not ready. And instead, what really we have been finding out in the last few decades is that we should always look at what students have to build on that. And to see that, I am going to be sharing a video clip with you. And I would like you to kind of keep an idea in mind. What vision does this teacher have of the students he is working with? And how can you attest what you're saying, right? But before we do that, and simply because I have a clumsy presentation, since I have my slides in one side and the videos on the other side, I am going to ask you to talk to the person sitting next to you while I do my clumsy change, and to speculate. So if a teacher, oh, that's true. I forgot that you have brilliant technicians here. And the brilliant technicians actually solve my problem. Goes to show that pain lasts longer than happiness. Because here I was still, worrying about my presentation when it was actually solved. Never mind. Think for a second. Then, what would a teacher who has a proleptic view of students who are, some of them, refugees, mostly students who come from stressed economic situations, and students who have now been in English only for 6 weeks. So imagine ninth grade, which is the first year of high school in the United States. These students are seated in an English language arts class. Okay? So what would this teacher do? We are going to now see a little bit of Mr. Thompson to, so what do I do now? Okay, here it is, here it is. I think it is coming. I'm doing, I have a great cheering team, that's good. So, we cannot hear anything. I'm doing, let me see, escape. and my brilliant technician friends. No, it's play, I know, but it's the volume that wasn't. I should have given you the question to worry about anyway, even though I was assisted by very helpful colleagues. Okay. I hope it works. Yes, that'll have to be it. If it doesn't work, I'll have to narrate instead. It's not moving. It is moving? Oh, okay, sorry. So if you don't hear sound, I'll have to tell you. So this is Mr. Thompson, and Mr. Thompson is working. We rehearsed this, imagine. I know. You want to sit down? Please sit down. Well, anyway, let me tell you a little bit about the class. As I said, it's a regular class, English Language Arts, because in the school where Mr. Thompson teaches, all teachers take newcomers and they keep them in that school for 1 year only. And after that 1 year, then students...
Before we read the essay, I want us to talk about some of the ideas that I want you to think about as you read the essay. So we're going to do an anticipatory guide. Today, I've given you some cards that you can use to talk about the anticipatory guide. So let's talk about these cards and how you're going to use them. Notice that it has two students on here, student 1 and student 2. And it has some words that you can use when you're talking about the anticipatory guide. We're going to practice this first. I wanted to see 2 of your classmates practice this. I want you to notice how Zalban and Luis read the anticipatory guide statements. Luis, I would like you to be student 1 and Zalban student 2. Use the expressions here to talk about the anticipatory guide.
I will read statement 1. It says, all human beings are basically the same, even if they speak different language, wear different clothes, or have different skin color. I agree with it because all humans are the same, because all have different religion or culture. All have different feelings and other things. So I'm going to mark it agree. What do you think?
I agree with you, Luis, because some of culture are very different but basically the same. And one of I disagree is have different skin color because it is the skin is not as for the culture, because in our family my father's skin is brown and my mother is white, so I think it is not true. And so for statement 1, I will mark disagree.
That was an excellent job modeling. And so what you saw them doing, you're going to do that. Person number 1 will go first. They'll read the statement on the card, they'll read the statement on the anticipatory guide, they'll tell their opinion, and the other person will agree or disagree with you and tell what their opinion is.
All speak different language, but we are humans. So I am going to mark agree. What do you think?
I agree with it because people has different cultures and different religions. There's some people is different language. I agree with you.
I agree with you because it's different feeling. It's people for a different religion than you.
I will read a statement 4. It says people who like the same art, for example music, movies and paintings, can become friends easily. I think I agree with it because
Sometimes people
people from different countries we come to school and learn some things. In art class also we two are same, right?
Yes.
We become friends, right?
Yes.
So I think I agree with this. What do you think?
I agree with you, Sunita, because, for example, if you like, for example, if someone likes to play soccer and Luis also too,
They become friends.
yes,
Yeah.
more faster. And if you don't like something and me, I like something, we cannot become friends.
So what we see here is students who have been in English for just 6 weeks. In fact, this is taken, the school is in Fort Worth, Texas, and it's called the International Newcomer Academy. And lots of things that we consider contrary, or we used to consider contrary to language teaching. The teacher is not correcting. The teacher is saying, you don't pronounce it like this, because the teacher has a proleptic attitude. He knows that if kids get excited about communicating ideas, he knows that if others are talking about important things, and you see the young man who actually even makes it very personal by talking about not all cultures have people that have the same skin color. In my family, that is not the case, right? And we can see how they understand each other. So there's that level of what we call intersubjectivity, which is so important for a globalized work, that I will make the effort to understand you, and I expect the same from you. And that is essential in intercultural education. Now I want to go to the next slide. So, okay, good. Teachers also require motivation. And we know that every person that starts in a teacher education program is motivated to change the world. But that motivation, that is, what are the reasons, the incentives they find, the emotions that lead them to the profession, is not something that stays like that forever. Motivation can be enhanced by the conditions that teachers encounter in their working environments, or it can be eroded. And that was already alluded to today, that we need to find the conditions that make it possible for teachers to work in environments that they find powerful. And it doesn't really take much, because teachers, in every single study that we have carried out in the United States, money is not number one. Number one is, I feel very lonely. I cannot talk to anybody. I'm stressed out. I have to prepare classes, and I don't share that with anybody. So, collegiality. A teacher that gets the chance to work with peers. And so thinking about how can schools create 1 or 2 hours a week where teachers really plan together, where they go and try what they plan together, where they come back and problematize and say, look at what my students did. What can we do next? Let's try the other. That's what makes teachers really excited and want to stay at work. Furthermore, we will see what a pivotal role in learning interaction has. Interaction that is rigorous, that is well-crafted, that is well-supported for students. And so these teachers, and this comes from a very different district, this is Norwalk, Connecticut. They were really upset by the way their students were doing so poorly. So with a new superintendent, they started trying to understand what goes on in classes. And they visited classes. I worked with them in helping them see what is the vision, knowing full well that we have short-term plans, mid-term plans, and long-term plans. It'll take us 5 years to get there. It's not like magic, right? We don't have the vaccine that will turn teachers overnight. And you see them there discussing, and in fact, they agree that it is interaction what needs to go. Reflection, and I don't know what happened to my PowerPoint, but the beautiful diamond of reflection disappeared. But reflection is talking about engines that drive knowledge. It is the engine that drives teacher understanding. And so I talk about 3 different types of reflection. There is anticipatory reflection, as when we contemplate as teachers what we should do and how we should go about carrying it out. And the planning, for example, is one instance of anticipatory reflection. There is interactive reflection, the kind of thing that those of you, and I'm sure everybody's taught, is going on internally in your heads as you appear to be cool and collected and you're saying other things, right? So you're saying, oh my God, I see some students are turning around, are they getting bored? Now I see 2, what do I do? Do I change, do I move? I see students looking puzzled. What do I do, right? It's that kind of reflection that we need to engage in continuously so as to be able to get better. And there's retroactive reflection, as when we revisit past events to learn from the past. And if we do that consistently with others especially, then we get what the literature calls pedagogical wisdom. The kind of thing that typically teachers say, you seem to have it in your pocket. You always know what to do. And it's not in your pocket, it is in your lived experiences of reflection. So there is also that very important domain of knowledge. And knowledge, what do I know about the subject matter I teach? For example, if I teach English as a second language, it's different than if I teach English as a foreign language. And what is it? And we'll come back to that in a minute. There is pedagogical knowledge that in general, for example, we know wait time is important. We ask questions of students and we wait rather than immediately jumping in with the answers. We have pedagogical subject matter knowledge, and that is how do these general pedagogical ideas infuse our knowledge of the subject and make wonderful learning happen in class. Knowledge of our students. And once again, that knowledge is not static, it's dynamic, because we keep learning from our students as we listen to them, as we hear them getting excited about this and that, then we remember when we're planning how we need to build in that. And of course, knowledge of self. A good teacher is always a humble teacher. A good teacher, unfortunately, becomes that teacher who wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning thinking, why did I do that? And then tormenting himself or herself and trying to fix it, right? And I have bad news for you. I've been in education for 51 years now. It doesn't get any better. You wake up at 1 o'clock now instead of waking up at 4 or at 5. But knowledge then is also, and that's at the middle of my slide, knowledge about language. What is language? And language, we need to understand, is a tool for communication, for getting things done in the world. And language is not just the language. Language is also body language. Language is also intonation, stress, rhythms. Language is also deictics, right? When we point, where we show. And so all of that are communication abilities. And that is why Mr. Thompson agrees with his students that they just have to listen to each other, do their very best, understand each other. But he also gives them little cards. And in the cards, there are what we call formulaic expressions. And formulaic expressions are the kind of thing like, let me give you an example. I agree with you, however, oh, I disagree, and let me share why. Or I have 3 points to make. Those are phrases that we plug into the language and that help us communicate with each other. They give us immense mileage in language teaching. So rather than teaching individual words, let us work for the formulaic expressions, because those are generative and they will be used time and time again. And you will see how they get increasingly more sophisticated as students go. Learning in an additional language, whether it is a foreign or a second language, implies interactive mediation. So teachers need to construct invitations for students to interact around the ideas that are at the center, at the heart of the lesson. And you saw in Mr. Thompson's class that groups of 2 students, dyads, are talking to each other at the same time in the classroom, as opposed to the class where the teacher pings a question and gets pong of an answer. And sometimes teachers ping and pong themselves, right? So that's not the way. The way is to construct interactive activities, either in dyads, in groups of 4, in groups of 3, but they have to be around the idea that it is learning the engine that drives development, and that, in fact, there is no such thing as readiness that is prior to learning. So always point beyond what all students in your class know and support them as they engage, they will develop. Furthermore, learning opportunities need to be enticing. And visiting classes, sometimes we see, oh my God, students are so nice. Why aren't they screaming in this class, right? At least in the States. And I cannot say anything because I haven't observed any class in Spain. But in the States, sometimes you visit classes that you think, I would go crazy in this class. So they have to be vital. They have to be live with ideas. They have to keep students at the edge of their seats, and they have to present them with a real opportunity to fail. Knowing you can fail is essential in learning. So let us look at another class. But this time, I showed you a little bit of a lesson from beginning students. One of the problems we have, and that is why we need to change dramatically in the United States, is that we have conceptualized language as form, as grammar, as lexis. And we have conceptualized learning as taking place in linear fashion. And so we teach language, the language, but we don't worry about ideas. And it has to be about ideas that we work about. So it's not curricularizing, as Guadalupe Valdez calls it, curricularizing the system of language, but it is about developing understandings. But in any case, the fastest growing number of English learners, and thank you for pointing out, those are our second language learners, and now they are 1/10 of the whole country. So they are a very significant number of students. But the fastest growing group is what is bureaucratically called long-term English learners. These are students who have been in the nomination of English learner for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, in some cases even 13 years. And they still cannot exit the category. And it has devastating consequences for them, because once you are labeled an English learner, you are tracked into certain courses, many of whom are not even credit-bearing for graduation. So the United States has a very serious need to turn around this lack of stimulation that we have given students. And this video comes from a class which takes in students who have either dropped out of high school or being kicked out of high school. These are students who are below the age of 21, have not graduated, and now they go back for as long as they need. Typically, it's 1 semester or 2. And in that school, they try to turn around what's happened to them and really make them excited about what they're learning and talk a lot. In fact, these are students who speak English very well. If you talk to them, you think they're native speakers of English. They just don't know how to read, they don't know how to write with understanding. So in this class that you're going to see, the teacher, actually to make them talk, has used a strategy that we call the round robin. And in a round robin, each person has a turn to speak that goes uninterrupted. And they can only talk after all the students, in this case 5 students, in the group have already had a turn. And so that is precisely to make them all talk, right? But the stimulus is a wonderful one, because these students are looking at what used to be the most iconic sports picture in the United States. And it's a picture, you may have seen it, of the 200 race in Mexico City. And there is one black runner, Thomas, that was first, and he's raising his right fist. And there is another guy on the left, 3rd place, that is also black, and he's raising his left fist. And so you look at the picture and there are many questions, but that's what students are doing at the beginning of the lesson that is going to explore the role of sports people in social protest and change.
So I see 3 men, 2 of them are colored, and they're raising their fists with a black glove on it, which signifies a powerful movement that went on.
What I see, to me it looks like it could be like in the civil rights movement. These are probably the first African Americans that represented the U.S. in the Olympics and won medals, because they're like the only ones that are raising their hand with a fist.
I agree, and so like there's a way. Okay, I might be completely blowing it out of proportion, but there's a white man standing in front of them, and there's 2 black males right behind, and they're the only ones raising their hand. So it looks like they're hearing a speech from someone, and as they're hearing it, it has something to do with like equal rights, and they're raising their hand. Sorry, they're raising their hand for the advocacy for themselves and for equality within race.
I think the black gloves and the hands being raised and the level that they're put in at a triangle. When you use a triangle, the top is always like the most powerful, and the 2 bottoms are always just the bottom basically. But the black man is in the middle and he's higher, which shows it shows that he has achieved something greater than the white man, and the white man is there with, he doesn't look as happy as the other 2 guys. And compared to the other 2 guys, he got a silver medal, and he's presenting the USA, which doesn't really look good on his part because the blacks are winning. Black equality.
What I see is, I don't think they did it for the U.S. really. I think at this point they're thinking more of themselves. Like they're very proud of themselves and the movement they're following. I think the raise of the hand with the black glove shows that, that the movement they're following is what brought them here. The support that they had and their ideas are what, is what caused all of this.
Beautiful. So teachers are prisoners of the bell, right? There are very exciting things are happening, and
So I see.
Oh, no, I want to go to the next one. What's really interesting, and it makes that lesson be really wonderful, is the fact that now I'm stuck. Oh, there it goes. Thank you. That one student, as you say, says the white guy, the white dude. He's just there standing, and he's representing the United States, and he doesn't look very happy. But actually, through the lesson, they are going to find out he's an Australian, and that he suffered even more dire consequences by joining in the protest than the two black guys. And so as students reflect, they learn that, in fact, they shouldn't have quick reactions, or if they have quick reactions, they should check them over time. It's a wonderful lesson. And it's a lesson that does build conceptual understandings about justice, injustice, protest, that engages students in analytical practices. We have seen them now observing and drawing inferences, but then they're going to read and question and engage in a number, and language. So language develops as a result of engaging in conceptual development and analytic uses. Furthermore, language does not develop in linear ways. It develops in spiraling ways. Well, we know that. I mean, I don't know, 50 years ago, I did not speak any English, and I got a scholarship to go to the United States. Well, I didn't speak the way I speak today, obviously, right? But I kept trying, and I kept working, and people would accept me. And then I learned. So this is a spiraling lesson in which takes actually 4 weeks. And it's a unit that takes 4 lessons, and each lesson 1 week. So it starts with the role of children in the desegregation of schools in the South, 1 week. Then it moves into the role of protest in sports. And then it moves into the role of youth in protest internationally. So it looks at Malala Yousafzai and her work. And lesson 4 is driven by students' interest, that now that they know about Peter Norman, the Australian runner, they want to learn what are the injustices in Australia. And you probably just heard, as I did this past week, that unfortunately the recognition of autochthonous languages was voted down in Australia. So very relevant. Let me move fast here. Teachers saying we need to engage our students in talk. And then there is practice. And practice is the most difficult domain of teacher expertise. Because we may have a vision, we may have knowledge, we may be able to reflect, and yet, as we try it in practice, what happens is, unfortunately, what Anne Brown called once the fatal mutations. What's in your head is one thing, and what translates into practice. And that's why we need collaboration, we need support, and we need all the rest. I was going to tell you a story, but I can't because we're prisoners of time. So precisely because of that. But let me close by going back to the whole model. It begins with vision, but that's not where it begins. So I'll come back to that. There is, of course, motivation, there is knowledge, there is reflection, which is the engine that drives them all. There is an understanding of practice. And practice is where things can go wrong. But actually, the arrows point in every direction. It may begin with practice, and that changes your vision. as we see a lot in working with teachers in the United States. One research project, how long does it take teachers to transform classes that are very unidirectional into classes that are highly interactive? And what seem to be the biggest, most untreatable issues, but we can treat them, except it does take 2 years of work. And so that is a model, and I hope we can talk about it throughout this wonderful conference. And it's just to understand that the development of teacher expertise is definitely possible, that it merits the attention and the use of all kinds of resources, not just money, but scheduling of teacher practice, so that they do get the chance to develop, and that it will pay enormously in the wonderful children that will develop into adults that are rational, that can really say, I thought this first, and now I know that, and this is what made me question it, and who can indeed, in a globalized world, overcome the multiple disagreements and terrible divisions that the world, unfortunately, is witnessing today. Thank you very, very much, and I look forward to talking with you.
Well, we have just a few minutes, very few minutes for questions. There's one question that I can't help asking you.
No.
I know your interest in immigration. I certainly know that you've been supporting a lot of kids, obviously. But we have a common trend that is becoming common, more and more common in Spain, which is very much getting immigrant students whose first language is actually English. So let's say people from Nigeria,
Right.
or in the south of Spain, people coming from Morocco whose first language is French. Is there any role, any space for those kids in the in the foreign language class?
Well, I think that if they're learning Spanish, definitely there is
No,
a
in the
role.
foreign language class. I mean, in the English class for, let's say, Nigerians, or in the French class for Moroccans.
It depends on how the class is conducted. If the class, once again, follows a linear structure where, for example, the first week they start learning I am, you are, definitely not. But if the class faces students with literature that actually helps them understand, project, as we say, education can be a mirror where we see who we are, but it can also be a window into the world. Help them confront a number of issues that are, similar and different to theirs, then yes, of course they belong.
I agree, 100%. Are there any, let's say, 2 questions in the room? 1 or 2 questions in the room? Anyone?
Wait time.
Don't be shy, go ahead.
There's one question. Whoever has a question, kindly stand up and raise your voice and ask it. Oh, there's a mic, no need to.
Good. You mentioned something extremely important, that it is in the book Fearless, that it is winning shallow. When you are a teacher, you are supposed to look this teaching pursuit of happiness. How a teacher could get that pursuit of happiness in teaching? Because that's the motto writers say. Thank you.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with a choice of topics, a choice of texts. If what we give students are texts that are infantilized or simplified, that is not going to cause happiness to students, and much less to the teacher. The teacher is the first person to be bored in the class, right? So I think the criteria always needs to be, am I excited about it? And if the teacher loves what the teacher is working on, then after a while, it becomes contagious. And I'm saying after a while because I taught for 6 years after getting my PhD at Stanford. I taught for 6 years in Salinas, California. And I thought students are going to love it. I had been a good teacher in the past in other contexts. And students looked at me like I was a lunatic because I was excited. I was inviting them, yes, you can. And then it was like day 5 that they started getting into it. And I am very proud to say that children who came from migrant laborers got to Stanford, got to Harvard, got to MIT. And it takes that excitement to, be interested. But if I bore you to death, what do you learn? How do you advance? Where do you get the models of who you can be? Right?
Okay, one last question over there.
Thank you. I was wondering, what would be your approach for a classroom in which you would have students that were 8-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 60-year-olds from China, Iran, Spain, and so on? Thank you.
I would say, why are they together in the classroom? That's the first thing that I would say.
Refugees.
Because they're refugees, but can't we put refugees of different nationalities more by age alike? Because the interests of kids, for example, who are between the ages of 4 and 8 can be very similar, and we can work beautifully with them. Then, as kids get to be teenagers, different things happen, and identity becomes central. Who am I? What are these changes going on with me? Plus, how is the world changing? And then adults. I actually find it counterproductive to put a child and an older adult in the same class. They can practice together, but for the moments of learning, I'm not against cross-age group. Once in a while, it would be wonderful for all of them to engage in a project together. But I think for basic learning, we need to think of materials, pedagogical materials, that are age, interest, and excitement appropriate.
Thank you.
No tenemos ya mucho más tiempo. Ahora tenemos una pausa para el café. Dr. Walke, thank you very much for your inspirational
Miles de
talk.
gracias a todos.
And I entirely agree with you when teachers complain about, well, my students are not motivated. And the question is, are you as a teacher?
Exactly.
Muchas gracias.
Media hora.
Tenemos media hora para el café y a las 6 en punto comienzan las comunicaciones. Gracias.